Relations Secret Ballot for Strikes Amendment Bill committee stage.
I declare the House and Committee for the consideration of the Education Freedom of Association Amendment Bill and of the Employment Relations Secret Ballot for Strikes Amendment Bill. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker. Members, the House and Committee on the Education, Freedom of Association Amendment and Employment Relations Secret Ballot for Strikes Amendment Bill. Members, we move first to the Education Freedom of Association Amendment Bill, and we will be doing this debate clause by clause. So the question is that Clause 1 stand part. Grant Roberts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and this obviously will be the first of a number of contributions I plan to make on the bill this evening and in future sessions that we have debating this bill. And it's interesting to start with the title clauses, obviously title clause, because obviously if part by part debates we tend to do the title at the end, and it's perhaps sometimes then we're able to sum up some of the arguments that come forward. But I'll attempt to do that, Mr. Chair, and I'll do so by working through a number of amendments that I've put on the table for the title to this bill. Because in actual fact, the first of those would be to say that rather than being the Education Freedom of Association Amendment Bill, the correct title for this bill, Mr. Chair, should be the Education Removal of Student Choice Amendment Bill. Because one of the things that's perhaps not understood, but it will be understood by one member of this House, not well understood, but will be understood by one member of this House tonight, and that's Mr. Tau Henare, is about what this bill is actually amending. Because this bill is actually amending a law that the National Party, and Mr. Henare is very familiar with when this bill came into being, this law came into being, that it's quite possible for students to choose on a campus around New Zealand whether or not their association will have compulsory or voluntary membership. And indeed, the Auckland University Students' Association has chosen to become a voluntary students' association. The Waikato Students' Union chose to become one, then chose to go back to being a compulsory organisation. They had the choice, and that would be why, Mr. Chair, I would title this bill the Education Removal of Student Choice Amendment Bill, because in actual fact, if 10% of students on a campus decide that there will be a referendum, there will be a referendum on the nature of the membership of their students' association. That's student choice. That's something that the ACT Party, because actually their groups on campus are actually effectively called student choice on campus. So this is a notion, the notion of student choice, that the ACT Party should be very familiar with. So this bill actually takes away student choice, and it's amending legislation not put forward by the Labour Party, but legislation actually put in place by the National Party. Because the National Party knew the last time that this bill came up that this wasn't a workable thing, voluntary membership. It would cause too much damage to important student services on campus. They knew it was unworkable, and Mr. Henare and others came up with a system by which student choice could be put in place through referenda if enough students wanted that, and that was a democratic thing. That will enable choice, but it still meant that the fundamental work of students' associations could go on until such time as which students made their decision that way. So that is why I would call this bill, in this title debate, the Education Removal of Student Choice Amendment Bill. But Mr. Chair, there are a number of other titles, and these are in the SOP that I put forward. Another would be the Education Destruction of Student Advocacy Amendment Bill, or indeed the Education Destruction of Student Welfare Amendment Bill, because they are two of the core elements of work that students' associations have done on campus over many, many years. And there is no doubt that this bill will in fact lead to the destruction of student advocacy and of student welfare. In particular of student advocacy, because the promoter of this bill has actually been at pains to try and find every way possible to make sure that it won't actually be possible for a university or a polytechnic to contract with a students' association for advocacy type services. That's what they're trying to avoid here. Or for welfare type services if it's delivered via perhaps what's seen as a political body. So the title of this bill easily could be the Education, Destruction of Student Advocacy or Destruction of Student Welfare. And we actually have empirical evidence for that, Mr Chair, for that title, because that's what happened in Australia. That's the very thing that happened when this kind of legislation was passed into law in Australia, was that 72% of the associations had a significant or total reduction of the services that they provide, the advocacy that they provide, the welfare that they provide. And that advocacy is vitally important. In the select committee process, we had submitters who would agree with this title, Mr Chair, because they came to us, and there was one particular student from Waikato University who gave us a particularly interesting submission, somebody who said himself he wasn't a political person, but he noted that when his flat burned down and that the insurance company of the flat's owner were forcing them out of the flat, Mr Chair,
Brian Robertson.
when they were being forced out of their flat in Hamilton, that it was the Waikato Students' Union intervention, their advocacy, that ensured that those students could stay in that flat, that effectively ensured that those students could continue studying at Waikato University. And that example is replicated right across New Zealand in polytechnics and universities over many years, that the advocacy work, that the welfare work that is done by students' associations is the reason that students can actually continue to study. And those services are provided by students for students under the current model. Now, it may well be that someone on the other side will get up and say, well, those services will continue to be provided because the institution will provide them. But actually having students provide them has a number of benefits. It has the benefit of being incredibly cost effective. And we also heard about that, and I'll come back to that in later submissions, about the value of the labour provided. So that is a reason, Mr Chair, for calling this bill the Education, Destruction of Student Welfare Bill, because that work that students actually do will now be taken away because those associations won't have the resources, won't have the ability to be able to provide those kinds of quality services, and if they are going to be able to provide them, they'll be beholden to the institution, who may or may not, Mr Chair, like the idea of significant student advocacy within a students' association, that they are controlling what they do. The same sort of title could be given, Mr Chair, the Education, Destruction of Student Clubs Amendment Bill. And every time we see a Commonwealth Games athlete or an Olympic Games athlete from New Zealand, and we look at their success, and we had this in the recent Commonwealth Games, we can ask ourselves, did that person go to a university in New Zealand? When we watched the World Rowing Championships, a number of the successful rowers for New Zealand had come through university sports clubs that are part of students' associations, that are supported by students' associations. Their success, our success as New Zealanders, undermined by this kind of bill. So the title could well be the Education, Destruction of Student Clubs Bill, because student clubs won't survive in the form they are now if student associations don't have the resources that they have now. Those resources have meant the difference between some of those sports clubs being able to continue and not continue. And again, we heard evidence from cultural and sporting clubs right across New Zealand saying that this bill would be fundamentally damaging to them and to the people who are part of their clubs and their organisations. And so that could be an appropriate title. But the downgrading of students' associations, which would be another title potentially, Mr Speaker, Mr Chair, the Education Downgrading of Student Associations Amendment Bill, that is caused by this bill, has no justification other than an ideological one. Because at every stage of the submission process, every institution that came in front of the Select Committee said, please don't pass this bill. Because every institution, this is not the student associations, these are the actual institutions. They came and said, don't do this, because we value the work that students' associations do. We value their independence. We want them to be part of the campus experience. And, quite frankly, those institutions don't want to take on a number of the tasks that students' associations are doing at the moment. And it's been said before, another title for this bill could easily be the Education Don't Let the Vice-Chancellor Choose the Music for Orientation Amendment Bill. Because actually, there's the